Welcome everybody to the Mind, Body, and Soul TV, coming to you live from our Denver, Colorado studios. I'm your host, Coach Steve Toth, and also the founder of Conscious Evolution Media, going on 12 years, 15 plus thousand shows, and we are no longer counting. And we have a fantastic show for everybody for this evening. We have a great guest with us, and I want to make sure that I mention that we are being streamed on YouTube Live, as well as possibly on YouTube Red, and also on Hangouts and at consciousevolutionmedia.com. And our guest this evening is Brian Wu, PhD. He is an MD candidate in biology and disease, and he's joining us from that beautiful place, as I recall it, from Los Angeles. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you. You look so young. How can you be a PhD already?
So I started straight out of undergraduate. So I did 2 years of my medical school, and then I did 5 years of my PhD, and I'm back as a third year medical student right now.
Wow. So we got a smart person here with us this evening. I love smart people. I spend a lot of time. I spend a lot of time about the brain. All right, so I'm really excited because our theme for this evening is how to teach children to be healthy from the power of stories. So I'm just going to ask you the usual question how I start my shows, which is, if I took away all your titles, like the PhD and all the other titles anybody has ever called you in your life, if I take them all away, if I had that power, which I don't, what would you say? Who is really Brian Wu?
So I think at this point, one of the big things I am is a family man, because you can't take that title away from me. So I'm married, and I have an 18-month-old son, and that's a big inspiration and part of what I'm doing right now. And I think what I want to see in my son is him develop as, and for me to do everything I can in my power to have him have the life that I think he wants to have and that I would want him to have. And I think that sort of energy and passion I also want to give to everyone I end up working with or meeting.
Oh, fantastic. So I don't have the power to take any of those titles away, by the way. This is just really, I created this question so that we can get a little bit deeper into who people are. And so that was fantastic, and I'm really curious as to, knowing what your passion is and knowing who you are. Do you believe that our source is health?
That's an interesting question. I think source is one of those words that people define differently. I think everybody finds their sort of passion, energy, source, drive, motivation from a number of different factors. But I think one of the things is you're sort of mentioning is that everyone has health, and that's something that everyone is going to usually strive for, to be in the best health that they can be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is correct. However, if I look around, Brian, I'm seeing drugstores opening at every corner. They are spreading like McDonald's. And as I look around, and again, this is a Conscious Evolution network, and I have to talk about this because I'm finding that creativity and the things that you have created, like these wonderful books for parents and kids, do come out of creativity, and I believe now, doing this now for 30 plus years, that it comes out of all of this is coming out of life, which is really, every subject has two ends, a positive and a negative. So I wanted to bring up the fact that people are very powerful, and they're very powerful, and they can make themselves sick as well as they can make themselves healthy. And I wanted to get your feedback on that, because too many people these days, I feel, are running to the drugstores to get a quick fix. And that's really not where it's at, as far as I can tell.
Sure. I think that's, I mean, that's a whole sort of different realm of topics, but and that can have hours and hours of discussions. But I think what you're touching on is very key because as we were talking about, everybody wants to have their best health. How they go about that, there's many different ways. Some people go to the drugs, some people have lifestyle choices. And I think what the sort of new wave of medicine, or at least the wave that I want to support, is that it's always going to be a combination of factors. There's always this need for balance. So whether there is some type of drug that will actually help you, whether that's making the correct lifestyle choices, it's all about sort of that best version of your own personal treatment plan that you can develop. And I think the part of the reason is that can often be a very long-term plan, and that doesn't always sit well with people.
Okay, so let's get back to really your passion, which is you write these books, and they illustrate it, and they also tell a story. So tell us why story? How did you come to? Because I feel that this is very innovative, and it's not just for the kids; it's for the parents as well. It's like I always wondered. Where are those user guides that we're supposed to have when we are born? And I see this as one of those user guides.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of the angle that we wanted to approach. The idea of narrative medicine is not necessarily new, but I think it's something that's maybe slowly starting to gain traction. Is the idea that people can use stories or narrative or art or all these creative outlets to sort of teach patients about how they can, again, approach their health in the best way possible. So for me, I've always approached it as education on these different topics that we're talking about that you don't always get to hear and talk to about your physician. Sometimes it's things that you have to hear about or read about or talk to a friend or something like that. So there's always these different ways of learning about things, and this is something that we wanted to add to that story. And part of that story aspect is like everyone remembers cartoons or movies or different things they hear, and those always stick with you. So this was supposed to be a way of conveying that critical information user guide things that you're talking about in a way that people will hopefully remember and really try to act upon.
Right. So what I hear in there too is that it's designed to be fun, and it's almost like kids and parents will learn through a byproduct of being engaged and having fun, not just with themselves, but with their child. Which I think
that's really hard because when you go to the doctor, it's often not a one-way conversation, but in a sense, they're telling you what to do, how to do it. And this is supposed to be a way that you can engage and sort of interact and learn through something that's not so, again, not one-sided, but in a way that you can really sort of take an active part. And we're actually really trying to go beyond just books and do video games, videos, interactive kind of stories, and really bring patients into the world of medicine.
Yeah, very good. I was actually going to go there, but you just went there 2 seconds before me, because I was going to bring up in the next dialogue is, well, look at how successful kids are with computer games. They love to have fun, and they basically learning computer skills and the computer itself and how it works and why it does what it does and how it does what it does, just by first having them interact and engage and have fun with it, which is the same idea as what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, and I think that's sort of the joke often with this sort of new millennials and the new children being so good at technology and learning so quickly. And if there's a way we can have that sort of same engagement with health, then the idea is that this whole new wave of generation will be focused more on preventive care, healthy lifestyle, and not, as you say, just getting a quick fix or a drug that kind of takes away the problem that is underlying the issue.
Awesome. So are you thinking about getting this into schools or getting it into preschools, or are you thinking about how to do all that?
Yeah, we've thought about it. As a medical student with a family, sort of our business plan per se has been all over the place. Like, we would love to get this into the hands of all patients and families, but the way we do that is sort of still being figured out, whether we go through hospitals, physicians, libraries, schools, direct to consumer. There's a lot of routes we can go. It's sort of just figuring out the best way to get the word out there and trying to develop the best product we can.
Yeah, so I saw on your website a number of different illnesses and subject matters, quite a few that you have already developed these books for. So I would be just curious. I immediately connected with two of them because one of them my son has, and another one I had, and I kind of cured myself. So I'm curious if we could spend, we couldn't possibly spend a lot of time on these different books, but I'd like to just pick two, if you don't mind.
Sure.
First one is the one about OCD, is because my youngest son has it, and I know how challenging it is for him, and it has been for me as well to understand. So I'm trying to, do you remember what the title of it is, the book that talks about OCD? I can find it here real quick. Yeah, Sam's Secret Life is the title of it. And could you maybe share with the viewers just a little story about that book, and how did you write it, and what kids and parents will get from the book?
Sure. So I'll go a little bit more broad, and then we can always talk about any more specifics afterwards. But the way the books are designed, which is actually a great way you brought it up, is we have everything through a fictional story. So we actually walk through a character in the story who has sort of figuring out the symptoms of OCD and how they're going through it and how it affects their lives. And then from there, they end up visiting a physician and then learning about the disease and ways that they can sort of deal with that, and how they can sort of live a normal, happy, healthy life. And from there, they just kind of have the ending where they are learning to deal with it, and they kind of are in a better place than they were in the beginning. So that's really the framework of all the books, and that's sort of the fictional narrative that we take a character and this patient on. And from there, we also have resources, tips, and tricks that we found. And we've been trying to make it so that it's information that's not just out there, but things that people can really have concrete advice about. But we do have that disclaimer that none of this is medical advice. But specifically for things like OCD, it's again, there's no quick fix that we're talking about. So it's something that you have to learn sort of ways to understand and help educate the patient on, so that it's not something that they feel is like debilitating, but something that they can slowly and progressively be able to live that kind of life that they want with it.
Do you think there's a way to frame OCD as an advantage versus a disadvantage?
Yeah, so that's an interesting point, because there's always a spectrum to diseases, whether you're talking about autism, OCD. There's like this sort of type A characteristics of where kind of OCD can lie, the type A personalities, so they're called. And definitely a lot of those people have the advantages of being very successful and being able to do a lot of things that perhaps other people can't. I think I've heard somewhere that Steve Jobs might have been more A-type, so borderline OCD, so there's always this sort of gray zone where these things lie, and that's sort of where we want to avoid necessarily labels and stigma, but really just talk about education and best practices.
Mm-hmm. Could you, is this too much to ask? Maybe it is. Maybe I'm not being realistic, but is there a way you can frame up just a little story from that book? Like, I don't know if that's easy for you to do, or do you have any of the books handy?
So like the actual story aspect of it?
Just take a little snippet of a story.
Sure.
Just you can share.
So one of my favorites is actually the ADHD book. So it's not necessarily the same as OCD, of course, but the story is just like the character is Bobby. He's at school. He's having some trouble focusing. He gets in trouble with his friends, and the school is not necessarily sure what's going on. And so they decide to just go visit a doctor. The doctor starts explaining to him what the symptoms are. And in this case, there is a little bit more of a clear-cut medication that can be used, but along with some different types of therapy. So he starts going on that therapy. He goes back to school. He ends up doing really well in school, getting back along with his friends. And then there's sort of like that nice resolution. So it's a pretty simple story, but we try to really incorporate all the different aspects of that health in there. And in a way that is, again, not something that should be stigmatized or anybody should feel uncomfortable about, but in a way that an engaging conversation can be had.
Okay, awesome. So is your child completely healthy, Brian?
At this point, he is. He did have a cough when he was younger, but luckily so far he's been a healthy child.
Oh, okay, awesome. Let's just keep it that way, shall we?
Yeah.
So
I hope so.
So I also heard a story, since we're talking about stories. I heard a story that the way Jesus, and this is not a religious network, but I just want to use the story. So the way Jesus was healing people is that he ignored the illness. And I don't know how easy this is to do for people in the world of science and for doctors, but he ignored the illness and he focused on the complete and absolute positive energy of the person, and saw and experienced, more importantly, experienced that person to be 100% healthy as he touched them or looked at them. So he didn't see the illness, and that was the power of his healing. What do you think about that? I mean, what comes up when I share that little story?
I'm actually Christian, so I appreciate the story.
Okay.
But I think that's sort of an idea of holistic medicine, and where I'm hoping a lot of primary care is going in that direction, where it's people don't look at a person as the illness. Part of the terminology even is changing from the diabetic patient to a patient with diabetes. So it's this idea that there is this person, and then you're just kind of trying to figure out the best way to treat and work with someone who has diabetes. So just like you said, is can you figure out the underlying factors, whether it's genetics, social, psychosocial? There's like lots of different ideas now about all these different things that it can affect someone's health. And I think as we start to tease out and figure out all these different roles, it's going to be very interesting to see how things develop.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just wanted to quickly share just another story, because the second book I picked from your arsenal is diabetes, and I picked it because I've had it, and I've had it. It took me 2 years to heal myself, and the quick story about that is I attracted something, a person to myself that wanted to be on television about what he called the new health conversation. And long story short, I basically signed up to go through his understanding and his research and his program on television, and use that to cure myself. And that show ended up going to PBS. And it was very, very successful, because instead of we just talking about it, I actually walked the talk and did everything, all the solutions that he was recommending to do. And I actually did them, and I lost 54 pounds. And
wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. And I cured myself of diabetes. It did take me 2 years, but I completely changed my, all my habits and the things that I was putting in my mouth that, unfortunately, most Americans are doing all day long, every day. Things like pop. I don't drink pop anymore. It's way too damaging. And I came to the conclusion that my joy and my happiness and how I feel moment to moment is more important than anything else. So from that realization, what has occurred is when I am in front of a pop, it doesn't work. Like I can't drink pop because it's not congruent with who I am. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And I think you're sort of that excellent story and example of how medicine and lifestyle changes can be so transformative. And whether that was sort of through the program that you were in, the education, the ability to talk with someone and work with closely with a coach, it kind of doesn't matter because in the end you reach that goal. So for us as future physicians and healthcare providers, we're trying to figure out how can we have more people like you, people who stick to the program, people who understand and can make these choices and say like, I know that it might be 2 years down the road where I'm completely clean of my diabetes, but how can I explain that to you in 5 minutes when you're here in my office about something that might be so far off? But the story aspect, if I heard your story or if I told your story to a patient, they might be like, okay, that could be me. That could, I could cure my diabetes with these kind of changes. And I think that's going to be much more memorable than a doctor just telling you like, stop drinking soda.
Right. Well, so you were absolutely right. And that's why I love what you're doing, because what we did on that TV show, 24 shows, 24 episodes, is basically tell a story. That's what it was. And I was part of the story, beginning where I started and how I ended up at the end. And it was extremely powerful. And we're still getting thousands and thousands of people watching them and sending lots of messages on YouTube. So it's been an incredible success. So I am 100% in support of what you're doing, because I just know from personal experience that it works. And why do what doesn't work when we can choose to do what works? Right. So so I definitely want to help you to. Do you have any of these books handy or not really?
Like right in front of me, or
yeah, next to you.
I probably should have brought some to show your viewers, but I don't have any.
It's okay, they can look it up. Just tell them where they can go to find out more about these awesome books for children and for adults as well.
Our website is healthstoriesforkids.com. Our books are available on Amazon as an ebook, and we are actually signed up with the independent publisher for our hard copy books of 3 of them. But as I said, we're really trying to develop the best outlets to get these books into the hands of patients, and we're changing up our website so that we're giving away one of the books for free. We're trying to partner with a lot of different organizations out of USC, out of Los Angeles, to see what we can do. And this is actually one of the things that I was excited about, is we're actually potentially going to try to do a clinical trial and test out if these are effective in actually improving clinical outcomes and patient satisfaction.
Awesome. So I'm also curious about how do you feel that these books assist people with connections? I am these days very much into connections. I'm feeling, and this is just an intuition I have, and it's what's also working for me. Not to say that this is what works for everybody, but it works for me. That the more connections that I have with people, and connections meaning not just on the surface, but deeper connections. So I'm seeing your books as for example, parents taking them into the bedroom, and before the kids go to sleep, they may read one of these books, or from this book, one of these stories before the kids go to sleep. And to me, that means, and the way that shows up for me is that building a connection, not just an engagement between the parent and the child and vice versa, but also it enriches the connection between child and parent. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, and I think, again, I know you kind of mentioned it too, but we are going back to the heart of stories, because stories are connections. They're ways that we can communicate and share. And I think wherever you go, these stories are going to be the best way to sort of leave your mark on someone. And if we can do that in have that child just feel better about themselves or learn and understand, I think that's just, it makes all the difference to me.
Right on. So the child could be 30 years old, and he could go, okay, so I remember when I was 4, my mother read me this story about this illness or whatever, and this 30-year-old could be having a conversation with his or her partner or a friend or whatever, and it just comes up in conversation, and it's never forgotten because the story is so touching that people remember it forever, right?
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, I'm kind of a movie guy, but that's the same
Me
thing
too.
about how movies, movies from the 30s, 40s, 50s are still in conversation today. And I think when I was a child growing up with Disney movies and how those are probably going to be a part of the conversation that I have with my son now. We just went to Disneyland last weekend, and so we were maybe even enjoying it more than he was, just seeing and being a part of that experience, those stories that are brought to life.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Brian, our conscious half hour has almost run out. I just want to acknowledge you for being who you are in the world and the work that you're doing. I'm feeling that this is extremely extremely innovative, and it's basically answering that question. I mean, this show is the Mind, Body, and Soul TV, and and you connecting all the dots with these books, our minds, our bodies, and our spirit. And it's absolutely fantastic. And thank you for what you're doing. And I know that you are already successful, and you will be even more successful in the coming years, getting this out there to as many people as possible. So thank you for what you do. I appreciate you being on the network. And for everybody else out there, if you were touched, moved, and inspired by any of these stories that we told here on this show today, please continue to come to this show. Keep watching it on YouTube. The more you watch it, the more it gets up to the top 10 every month. If it makes it to the top 10, it can go to public television or cable TV or any of the new networks that we're in the process of looking into. And just keep coming back, because guess what we're doing here? We're doing the complete opposite of what commercial television does. I don't have to say anything more about that. So thank you. Thank you so much, Brian, and have a great evening and a wonderful rest of the week. Thank you all. See you guys tomorrow. Bye.